I don't know if you noticed, but I really like building things. And one of the things that I like building is things out of bricks. A very special kind of brick. There's just one little problem with all of this. All of the things that you just saw are pre-built sets. Somebody has put the time and effort to actually design them and put them together and have a bunch of extra parts that I have no idea what to do. I mean, I have some ideas, but I just do not know how to put them into practice because I need to properly design specific mocks. So this is where I thought that maybe Claude and MCP apps can help me. So I built an entire MCP app that allows me to use Claude to go and design Lego sets. That's right. I can now use AI to help me build. So if you have not yet learned about this concept of MCP apps, I highly recommend you check out one of my previous videos where I talked about this. But the gist of it is that it's a capability that is built on top of the Model Context Protocol specification. It's an extension to it that allows rendering rich user interfaces inside the agent that you're using to interact with MCP. So if typically you would have a lot of text going back and forth, now you can actually render an interactive user interface where you can see what the agent is going to be doing. And the agent also has context as to what actually is happening in the user interface, so it can then react to it and make other decisions. Now, given the fact that that capability exists, first thing that popped into my mind is, how can I use this to make use of my extra Lego bricks that are just sitting around in the giant box that I showed you? And for that, I decided to write an MCP app. It is open source. You can get it on GitHub for free and tinker with it. And what I'm going to show you today is how this works locally, exposed via Cloudflare tunnels. So because I want to make sure that it runs in Claude.ai, but it just as well will work in any other client that uses MCP apps. So let's take a look at how this works in practice. So to make this experimentation with bricks easier for myself, I decided to build this app in the open because I'm sure there's pieces that I've missed, and the easiest way to fix them is to put it in front of the community of folks that would use it and help me make this better. So I have this running inside of GitHub, or it's exposed on GitHub. You can go and download this. It's called Brick MCP app. It's as basic as it gets, right? And all of this is based on TypeScript. It's written with a TypeScript SDK. It's using the MCP apps extension, and all kind of the pieces are there. You can just clone this locally and start running it with one caveat, because this project would not be possible without the amazing work of the LDraw community. And if you do not know what LDraw is, it's basically an open source project that documents every imaginable Lego brick. And I'm not kidding you, like there's thousands of pages, well, maybe like a little bit less than thousands, is like 1,400, but there's a lot of pages that document these individual components that I can jump, I don't know, page 700, for example, and see the variety of different Lego bricks and their structure, right? So I can just take a look at, for example, there's animal bunny ears here. And if you look inside the file, I can see the 3D view and I can see the definition for LDraw. what's awesome about this too is that for my core project to make this work in 3D and make this work in Claude, I use Three.js, the library that enables us to render 3D things directly in the browser and by proxy in Claude. And so what that also means is that I can theoretically take the data from LDraw and somehow translate it into 3D objects inside Three.js. Now, lucky for me, that was already done because Three.js supports LDraw. So if I have all these various bricks that are defined here, all these various shapes, all I need is to just pull the library locally on my machine, because that's, or whatever I'm running the server. It doesn't need to be my machine. It could be Cloudflare. And we can go to, I don't know, page 780, for example, and we'll see a bunch of different parts here. And I can just pull the data file and then render it in 3D with Three.js in my application. So that's exactly what I did. Now, if you are cloning this repository here, you're trying to experiment and tinker, you will notice that the repository is a little bit too small. And that means that the LDraw components are not actually bundled with it. And that's by design. They are not bundled with it. If you're downloading the repo, they're not there. You need to run a separate command because the LDraw community has generously enabled local download of LDraw components. So we have a separate command for that. It's called download LDraw. So if you run npm run download :LDraw, it's going to just download the library locally, extract it, and make it ready for the Brick MCP app server to consume it. So that's all nice. Let's take a look at how this works in practice. So I have my terminal here. I'm going to run npm run build just to make sure that I have the latest copy of this application that is actually working, that we're going to validate that there is no build errors. The most important thing when we get started, because I don't want to be diagnosing this if, you know, the MCP connection or anything else if the build itself doesn't succeed. So we're going to run build first, and then I'm going to expose the server locally because I'm debugging it. I'm with npm run dev. Easy enough. If you use npm before any TypeScript project, this will be very, very familiar for you. And you'll notice that it exposes it on HTTP localhost 3001. Because I want to connect this to Claude.ai, I can't just use localhost because Claude.ai is a hosted service. It expects me to have an endpoint that is exposed on the public internet. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and use Cloudflare tunnels. And you've seen this in my other videos. I'm a fan of Cloudflare. I'm a fan of Cloudflare tunnels because it's just so easy to make this happen. And it's basically npx Cloudflare d tunnel --URL. And then we expose the localhost :3001 as our locally running server. Now, also because I'm running inside a VM here, I want to make sure that I break through the wall and expose this as a public URL. So we're going to do exactly that. And I'm going to get this URL shortly from Cloudflare, which is great. So we're going to go ahead and copy this. And also, I'm not going to be experimenting with some of these pieces inside the actual VM because I don't have 3D acceleration, and it works much nicer outside of the VM on a machine where I have a RTX 3080 that is doing a pretty darn good job. So we're going to go and switch to our Firefox instance here. I'm going to just zoom in just a little bit. So you'll see I'm inside Claude, and we're going to go ahead and add a custom connector. But before this project, it's not just a simple project. I'm going to use the URL here that Cloudflare gave us and do /test. And what this enables me to do, we now have a test harness here. Right, like it's a 3D view. It's really nice. It actually has a little compass that you can see at the bottom here, right? And I can start placing bricks here. So I can just connect to the server. I can actually paste the URL, connect to it, and enable brick placement. So I can just start tinkering with bricks here. But that is going to kind of, you know, kill the fun for what we're trying to do. So instead, I'm going to show you how this works with Claude. So we're going to go to Claude, and we're going to add a custom connector. I'm going to call it the MCP brick server, and then paste the URL that we got from Cloudflare. But we should not forget that we need to add /MCP. I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, so now we're going to wait for a second for it to connect. And if it is not grayed out, it means it actually successfully connected. So that's fantastic. We're going to go ahead now and create a new chat that I'm very excited to show you, because when I create a new chat, this means that I am now able to ask it to do things, right? Because it's not continuing any effort here. I just want to make sure that I start from a blank slate. It has never seen this MCP server, and we're going to ask it to go and build something. Now, I will caveat that whatever you ask it to build, sometimes it can be imprecise because this project is an experiment. Claude has not really been designed for building Legos, so we have to find out how to actually get it to iterate on our sets, but I'm going to experiment with this. So what should we ask it to build? And I think one of the interesting experiments that I typically run is ask it to build a Victorian house out of bricks. So we're just going to do that. So let's see. Let's build a Victorian house out of bricks. And you know what? I think there's an important piece here that also sometimes gets missed, is that when you are connecting an MCP server by default, one of the first things that that server has is access to a number of tools. And those tools are usually gated, and for good reason, because you want to make sure that if there's a MCP server that is misbehaving, that it doesn't actually automatically start doing things when it interacts with Claude. So we want to avoid that. Now, if you go back to the connectors view here and you have your MCP brick server connected, I can actually click on configure. And what this will enable me is to see all of the tools that the server exposes, right? Because Claude connected to it already. So we're going to go ahead and instead of needs approval, we'll say always allow, always allow, always allow for this as well, because it's my server. I trust that you do things. And, you know, if you're really, really curious, you can actually use this as an opportunity to peek at what tools are made available by the server. We have the brick readme, get available, search parts, all of the components that are needed for us to build this brick builder inside of Claude, which I'm very, very excited about, as you can tell. So we're going to click on new chat. And here I'm going to once again prompt it to just ask, build me the Victorian house out of bricks. So let's build a Victorian house out of bricks. That's it. That's the prompt. Now, because I want to make sure that this is more detailed, I can just ask it to use a diverse set of bricks. So, use a diverse set of bricks beyond the basics. Because I wanted to go and start using bricks that are not just your typical, 2x4s, but actual bricks like frames and the doors and maybe some of the slopes that it can use for the roof. So it's going to go ahead first and read the README, right, for our MCP server, because it's a tool that we expose that documents how to use it. That's super, super helpful. That I've noticed that if you expose a README tool first and you guide Claude to read it, you can embed some context that explains how to use the rest of the server. And in our case, that is very, very important because we have a lot of tools for things like brick search, placing bricks, replacing bricks, making sure that they're not floating in the air. And I did notice that sometimes it's not as perfect as I want it to be, but that's okay, because the tools that I've made it have allow me to dynamically basically swap bricks. So if I see bricks that are not fitting, I see bricks that need to be rotated, I can just tell Claude to do this because the foundational tools, the very, very basic things that need to work across the board are documented in the README and they're exposed in tools. Now, while Claude is thinking here, we can just switch back to our virtual machine and I'll show you that if we just go to our code and we go to SRC, we can look at our server here. So we can just scroll just a little bit down. You notice that I have all the components, right? The LDraw, the Three.js, kind of the core engine. And of course, there's server.ts. And in server.ts, there's a number of tools that are exposed, all the definitions for things like brick rotations and so on and so forth. And you can just inspect the code itself. But this is the catalog cheat sheet. So this is the important part, right? So we explain to Claude or any other agent that supports MCP apps as to what tools exist and how they work, and also the order of operations, because we want to make sure that we're following a predefined playbook for how to build a new set. Again, super, super helpful, and I love the fact that I can encode that directly. Now, here we can see that Claude is still thinking about what it needs to do. It's going to go ahead and start rendering the scene, which I'm actually excited to see now. It should be this 3D viewer space. Aha, there it is. Great. Love it, love it, love it, love it. We're going to switch back to the viewer mode here, and I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit and move around so you can see it. And we see that Claude is still thinking. I have my little compass that actually shows me, where am I oriented, that I can also guide Claude to do things with, which is great. And let's see, Claude is still thinking. And what I also note is that sometimes it might get a little stuck on a specific step, and that's okay. Like that's not a problem in the slightest. All you need to do is just tell Claude to continue. Like that's the trick. Once it gets stuck on something, when you see that it's kind of thinking for a long time and you see the option to not actually continue here, like right here I see a stop. So that means it's actually, right now it's actually thinking and doing things, but if it becomes one of those send message, just tell it to continue. It knows what to do, right? So it looks like it starts. It uses the brick place tool, which thankfully now allows multi-brick placement. My coworker Anton has created a pull request that made this a little bit better. So it actually enabled me to, instead of doing brick by brick, have a multi-brick effort where like several bricks are placed at once, and speeds this up significantly, which is really cool. So you can tell that it's now thinking about the brick colors, right? And all of these, every single brick here is actually pulled from LDraw. So we're going to ask to continue again, because Claude needs to go through the rest of the process. And sometimes there's like these little UX issues that might have seen flow through, like the text flying out, but that's okay. Like these will be fixed. So now it looks like it identified some of the initial components. It identified the colors that it wants, and we should be able to see it now go and build our Victorian house. So let's see what Claude comes up with. All right, so it's done some work here. And funnily enough, because I support different modes like strict, where it has to snap bricks to each other, and relaxed, where they can float in the air, it actually switched between them. And it produced kind of a, I want to say, a funny looking house, right? Like we see all these, like the bricks here, they're kind of floaty. They're not really attached to each other. There's a bunch of things that it kind of got right with the general style of the Victorian house. Like it tried to put a canopy, although it's kind of floating in the air because, again, it just used the relax mode. But we're using the actual, like these are the Lego bricks, right? This is the stuff that's coming from LDraw that it just places and renders directly in the environment here. Now, knowing all this, this is not a one-shot process. That's the really, really cool thing about having the MCP app that can actually help me build Lego sets, so that I actually can guide it to the right outcome. So here, for example, we see that we look at the coordinates and we see the north-facing and south-facing wall, the slopes, are actually need to be rotated and need to be snapping. So in natural language, I can now explain this to Claude and say, on the southern and northern slopes of the wall, the slope components, or bricks, I guess, are improperly rotated. We need to remove the ones we have and replace them with a tighter structure so they snap, and rotate them 180 degrees to what they are now, right? Again, natural language explanation. Then I think the balconies here are kind of messed up, so we're going to remove the balconies. You also need to remove and recalculate the balconies because they are floating in the air. And you also need to remove the door canopy and rethink how the railing is placed next to the door because it's facing the wrong way. So as I'm giving these instructions to Claude, and now it's going to use again my MCP app and the MCP server that has all the capabilities to go and replace bricks, remove bricks, add new bricks, rotate them. This makes it easy for me to go and iterate on specific sets, right? So if I want to build something super complex, or maybe I want to build a skyscraper or a mock of an airport, I can use natural language to go and describe what I want to build and which positions. And I have my literal guides here, right, that tell me like what side I'm facing in. So I can describe it to Claude and say that the wall that is facing north, the wall that is facing south, the garden tree that is on the north side, that makes it a little bit easier to go and manage this. So let's see now what Claude comes up in terms of the feedback that I gave it and if it can improve it based on the capabilities of this MCP app. So it has done some work here. It actually came up with the fact that it does need a solid platform below the roof, which is kind of nice. There's still some issues here where we can see that the platform here, the hooks for the balcony are not quite what we want them to be, right? Like they're kind of floating in the air. But these are the things that we can adjust. And also like the windows are clipping, so we can actually ask it to go and replace the window with something else, right? Because we don't want them to clip in. And for a lot of these things, I would say the bulk of the problems that you can see here that it actually has things floating, it's probably in my implementation of the actual logic for the construction, because I need to better encode how the structural walls are presented, how the structure is supported if you are building a roof. But nonetheless, like conceptually, I love the idea of me being able to have a Lego building tool that I can just use Claude to help me iterate on what this should look like. And of course, we can improve some of the robustness here with things like brick placement and making sure that there's other components. But the fact that it can just take LDraw components, put them in the environment, and just structure them, that allows me to iterate on them quickly is magical to me. Like I absolutely love having this capability where I can just ask it, like, let's put some animal minifigs around the environment, and let's see if it's going to find those for me, because I know that the animal minifigs do exist. So let's see what happens. But just the idea of me iterating on Lego builds directly in natural language with the help of a large language model is something that I never knew I wanted until I actually started iterating on it and building with it. And if you have any ideas on how this can be improved, of course, all of this is on GitHub, all of this is available, it's open source. So open an issue, create a pull request. I'm always happy to take those contributions and make this more robust, because I want to evolve this tool. I want to make this better. Let's see, what animals did it put here? Oh my goodness, we have some dogs, and these are like legit Lego, like the bricks, right? Like we have some dogs, we have a hedgehog, a bird, a crab. Most importantly, a crab. I want that in my Victorian house. There's a bunny, like there's several bunnies actually, and there's some bushes, right? And the thing is, like, because this is based on LDraw, right? Because a lot of these bricks are indexed. Oh, look at that. It actually put a bird on top of our roof. That's neat. There's an owl on top of the tree. I love this. This is fantastic. Look at this. It actually, there's a cat as well. There's a frog here. Like these are the things that I generally would have to like go and iterate through this. And I just ask Claude because it has access to the entire LDraw library. This is kind of hilarious of how bad some of the positioning is, but at the same time, this is totally fixable with the rulebook. Now, at the same time, because this is LDraw, and I mentioned this before, I can go ahead and actually look up some of the components, right, that have existed. So we can go to LDraw, and for example, right, like I can take a look at, like, I don't know, what should we take a look at? There's I don't know, maybe there's a car. Is there a car? Can we place a car near a Victorian house? Like we have the Duplo car base. okay, maybe we'll use that. There's some Duplo car bases, and I can either refer to the parts by their name, by their ID, or I can just call it exactly what it is, and it's a Duplo car base, right? So let's take a look here. Let's go to page 37. I wonder if we have like a different car component here. I see this is how you know that there's a lot of stuff that you could do here, just because there are so many of these components, and a lot of them, by the way, are variations. Like, we don't need to look at the sticker components, but I like the idea of the Duplo car base, and maybe we can put it as a test car somewhere near us. So, let's try that. Let's go ahead and go back to our Claude and say, can you place a Duplo car base near the house somewhere? Let's see if it's actually going to be able to identify the component, because it did place all the animals, and I am in awe of just like how it actually discovered all of the relevant ones and how well they render with Three.js. But it did do a brick search, which is good. And then, of course, it did place the car there, which is kind of nice. Yeah. we have the car base. The car base is there. And also, because this is a tool that I'm building for myself, like, I can actually go ahead and place the bricks myself, right? For example, we have parts here like animal frog, animal owl. I can take animal owl and I set the color, and maybe I can like place it myself if I want another one, because I have access to the entire brick selection. So we have both manual and automated mode. So I could actually tell, Claude to go and rearrange bricks. I think this is super powerful for me. I am really, 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 really excited about making this better, make it kind of understand positioning better, make it understand what support beams are inside the roof, which it does not today, right? Because there are some like very clearly like impossible brick positions, but that's okay, because we have everything we need with LDraw, and this is just a matter of properly encoding a lot of the logic that Claude can use. And as you can tell, there's a lot of opportunity here to help you build Lego sets out of the bricks that you want. Another capability that I'm trying to build in here is if I give it enough of the, I show it the box of Lego bricks that I have that's sitting around, tell me what I can build with them. I'm looking forward to building more capabilities in this MCP app. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can build the MCP app. So if you're curious about building experiences similar to this, look at the link in the description. You can also build MCP apps today that work inside of Claude, ChatGPT, VS Code. We have an SDK for you. And if you have any feedback, reach out anytime, because we're aiming to improve this. It's all based on the MCP core protocol. Happy building.